Good afternoon and welcome to the Akron Roundtable. I'm Karen Talbot, Chair and President of the Akron Roundtable Board of Directors. Today's program will be rebroadcast on WKSU 89.7 FM on November 26th at 8 p.m., sponsored by Layman's. This continues to be a very different but effective venue for an Akron Roundtable event, and we're delighted that so many of you are able to join us today at the virtual forum. We sincerely thank the Akron Summit County Public Library for providing talent and resources to make today's virtual event possible. Today, it's our privilege to welcome to the Akron Roundtable stage Dr. Para Jones, President of Stark State College. Her topic is Educating and Training During the Pandemic. You can read more about this month's speaker, future Roundtable speakers, and our Akron Roundtable podcasts by going to our website, akronroundtable.org. Akron Roundtable is grateful for the generous support it receives from sponsors, patrons, and subscribers. You too can financially support our virtual forum series by going to our website to make a contribution, which would be much appreciated. Our title sponsor throughout our 2020 season is Cleveland Clinic Akron General. I'm fortunate to serve alongside an outstanding group of dedicated community leaders on the Akron Roundtable Board of Directors, a list of whom can be found on our website. Should you have any questions or suggestions for any member of the board, please feel free to contact them. During today's event, we'll be using Asker technology, which enables you to submit questions by way of mobile devices. Questions can be submitted at any time and will be forwarded for review during the Q&A portion of the program. Watch the screen for instructions should you need them. Please mark your calendar now for our December 10th virtual forum, when Akron Roundtable will host Dr. Elizabeth Menifee and Dr. Jeffrey Moore, both area psychiatrists, who will discuss mental health issues in a pandemic environment. This discussion will be moderated by Dr. Brian Hart, President of Cleveland Clinic Akron General. Today's speaker will be introduced by a fellow Akron Roundtable board member, Lisa Aurelio. Following Dr. Jones' presentation, she's generously agreed to take questions from our virtual audience. Lisa will also moderate that portion of the program. And again, please remember you can submit questions for Dr. Jones at any time on your device through Asker technology. Lisa?
Thank you, Karen. I'm honored to be able to introduce our speaker today, Dr. Para Jones, President, Stark State College. Dr. Jones has been the president of Stark State College since 2012. She is deeply committed to the work at Stark State and the community, as evident by her 30 years of service to students, businesses, and the community. Dr. Jones's first presidency was at Spartanburg Community College in South Carolina. Prior to academia, Dr. Jones worked in corporate marketing and communication for Roadway Express and as a technical editor of Goodyear Aerospace. Dr. Jones's passion for community college mission is driven by her belief that students are best served by affordable, quality education that leads to rewarding careers in our community and region. Dr. Jones holds a PhD from the University of Nebraska, an MBA with honors from Ashland University, and a bachelor's degree from the University of Mount Union. She currently serves and has served on the boards of many community and professional organizations, including the Executive Board of the Greater Akron Chamber, the Akron Urban League, Akron Grow Council, and Governor Executive Workforce Board, and many, many others. She is a member of the National Association of Manufacturers Education Council in Washington, D.C., and Team Neo Business Development Council. Dr. Jones and her husband Greg live in Jackson Township, where they raise their twin sons, Christopher, who is in Cincinnati, and Kyle, who is in New York City, and they are the proud grandparents of 3 beautiful granddaughters.
Thank you very much, Lisa, and Thank you very much for this opportunity to share my perspective on education and training during the pandemic at today's Akron Roundtable. And thanks really to all of you who are tuning in via any number of electronic devices to hear this presentation today as we all persevere through the pandemic. We who've lived our lives in Northeast Ohio have indeed lived through a lot of challenges, seismic shifts in our economy, seismic shifts in our industry sectors, demographics, social and community realities and needs. But we've never seen anything like this. From our physical and mental health and well-being to the economy, it's hard to imagine anything more disruptive than the pandemic. So as we prioritize, we know health and wellness have to be number one, but we must also stay focused on the priorities of our Elevate Greater Akron plan. This plan includes focusing on skill gaps, connecting all of our citizens to good jobs, especially those who are underserved, our minority citizens, our unemployed and underemployed citizens, and those displaced by the pandemic. So let me begin with some good news. There are jobs available. There are jobs available in the community right now. That's the good news. Some of you might already know that, some may not. According to Ohio Means Jobs and Connexus NEO, employers are still struggling to fill the high demand jobs that pay $15 an hour or more, that require some educational credential, but not necessarily an associate's or a bachelor's degree. And these are some of the jobs: CDL drivers, commercial driver's license, customer service representatives, industrial maintenance, production workers, nursing assistants and licensed practical nurses, sales representatives, social and human services assistants, medical assistants, and computer support specialists. In fact, Christine Marshall, Executive Director of OMJ, Summit and Medina Counties, points out that just a few companies alone, just a few companies have 300 skilled worker shortages, 300. So employers are definitely sharing insights during the pandemic. Insights such as there's a drastic increase in automation, not surprising. Insights such as it's challenging to recruit healthcare talent right now because of the pandemic. We already had shortages in nursing assistants, LPNs, RNs, and other healthcare talent, and those shortages have only exacerbated. Part of the challenge is childcare for many of the healthcare workforce who are women. We have IT skills gaps, especially in cybersecurity, especially right now with so many of our operations going online. And finally, there's a paradigm shift on the part of employers, recognizing that if they are going to be successful at attracting and retaining skilled workers, they have to get more involved and help with pathways from education to career. And everything I've just described truly is part of the Elevate Greater Akron plan. We have challenges. I talked about the good news. With that good news comes some challenges. So Elevate Greater Akron and a lot of the other experts in the region, from OMJ, Connexus NEO to Team NEO and the Governor's Office of Workforce Transformation, are saying the same thing, that the challenge is, how do we align people who need jobs with the jobs that our employers have available right now and jobs that will continue to be available as we come out of COVID? It's that alignment that's part of the challenge. And how do we do that with a special focus on those citizens who are most underserved? Minority citizens, low income, unemployed, underemployed, and especially now with COVID, those impacted by COVID. Well, you know, as I think about that challenge and as I hear that demographic, Those are the students Stark State is serving right now and has basically served through our 60-year history. So needless to say, Stark State is fully invested in the goals of the Elevate Greater Akron Plan and the partnerships needed to achieve the goals in that plan. 20% of our total student body is comprised of students of color. And at our Stark State College Akron facility, half of our students are students of color. The vast majority of our students are low-income working adults who are seeking credentials and degrees to better their lives and their families' lives. So it's not an accident that our strategic plan is explicitly and closely aligned with Elevate Greater Akron. Our missions are aligned, and our missions are more important than ever. So what is Stark State doing to carry out our education and training mission during the pandemic? Well, like all of you, like all of our businesses, like our whole community, we are focused on persevering, continuing our educational mission while we work hard to keep our students, faculty, and staff safe. You know, we've heard of the 3 R's in education. These days, educators are really referring to those 3 R's as resilience, resourcefulness, and responsiveness, and plenty of it. So clearly, we're following health and safety guidelines. You know, we have some latitude as a commuter campus. We don't have students living in residence halls, which prevents some spread, obviously, but we do have students who come from the community. Most of our students work, so we have to exercise extreme caution in terms of limiting access to campus, monitoring the temperatures of our students, faculty, and staff, making sure that we have all of the deep cleaning with hospital-grade cleaners, all of the precautions that are outlined by the state and the CDC. So we're following all of that. In addition, we are offering most of our classes online right now, especially those lecture classes that lend themselves more to the online format. So about 80% of our students are learning online or in a hybrid combination of some online and some in person. 20% of our classes, and those are the skills-based, laboratory-based classes in-demand programs like nursing, dental hygiene, manufacturing, welding, emergency medical services, and I could go on and on. We must maintain and fulfill those laboratory and classroom requirements because these programs are accredited by state and national agencies, and our students cannot graduate, cannot sit for their exams without fulfilling that in-person requirement. So needless to say, we've been making a lot of adjustments and frankly, adjusting the teaching schedule as we monitor COVID in our community. You know, one of the challenges of taking students from in-person to online is their comfort level. And we have some experience in online because we've been teaching online at Stark State for 20 years, again, in those skills-based classes. So we have been able to have our faculty who have great and deep experience in online coach and mentor our faculty who perhaps haven't done online at all to help transition students again because we have been limited over the past several months. But one of the real challenges, again, is adapting some of those skills-based courses and as I describe our students, many of them have not had the technology available in their homes, may not have internet access or high-speed internet access to do online learning. So I do want to thank the community. Many of our community organizations have helped our students, from Summit County to the Akron Community Foundation, Key Bank, PNC Foundation, GAR, Burton D. Morgan, and others. So thank you very much because that help has meant a lot. You've all heard of COVID relief. We have COVID relief funds for students, and those funds are used to really help students with the added costs they're bearing to stay in school during COVID. Those are the personal costs, not to pay for tuition, but to pay for childcare, transportation, if they've lost jobs, some support to help with that. But we also have institutional funds, and those funds are for plexiglass, which is the new normal on our campus, as well as face masks and all of the additional online supports that we have added with so many more students learning online. One of the things I think when we talk about the impact of COVID, we might overlook what we're doing, and that is a higher level of communication. You know, let's face it, in this environment, there is isolation with more students who are spending more time learning from home and less time on campus, and the same with faculty and staff, because our faculty are teaching both online, and some are totally online, some are online and on campus, and our staff are working 50% of the time from home. So this is a time when we feel communication has to be better than ever, clear, consistent, and constant to make sure people know what's happening with COVID, and to make sure from the perspective of our students, they have the supports they need. So we've learned a lot about how to support our students during this time. One of the things, well, you know, again, among many, many things we learned is that our students aren't necessarily fans of online learning. You know, we have those students who like it, those who can tolerate it, and those who absolutely hate it. And so it's been a challenge to balance all of that, but our faculty are doing a tremendous job of making sure there's support. But you know, in addition to serving that mission of the 15,000 students who come to our campus every year, we have been redoubling our efforts to work with the community to address that challenge, that skills gap, those in-demand jobs that I talked about earlier. We are really looking for innovative ways to fill jobs right now and to have systems and partnerships in place so that we can do a better job of making sure we connect our programs that lead to in-demand careers to the people who need them most and to the employers who want to partner with us. So let me talk about some of the new innovations. They're not so new, but let's call them scaled up. One of them that's not so new is that we've increased our employer-led partnerships. Now, we've had employer-led partnerships for years at Stark State. That's part of our mission as a community college. And we take it seriously and have had deep and long-lasting relationships. For example, First Energy, close to 20 years ago, began their line worker and substation technician training program with Stark State. At that point in time, we only had our campus in North Canton, which is not in First Energy's service area, but First Energy worked with us because we demonstrated that we could really provide the education to support the hands-on training and the skill sets and education First Energy needs in that employee, in that technical employee. So that partnership taught us a lot. But so did partnerships with Timken and Sandia National Laboratories and others. The challenge now is, how do we take what we've learned and scale it up? So over the past, frankly, since Elevate Greater Akron was launched, we began forming intentional and expanded partnerships with employers to fill these in-demand jobs. So here's how they work. Essentially, our employers hire entry-level employees. So these are employees they bring in, so they recruit them. They work with us to upskill those employees, and they create education and career ladders and pathways for those entry-level employees to move up in their organizations. That has been extremely popular among the employers because they're able to grow their workforce, among these entry-level employees because they see a future, and for our outcomes academically, they're transformational. Students do much better. We've seen this over many years of experience. Students perform much better, especially those working adult students, when their employers are our partners in education. So that's one program that we've been scaling up and seeing some terrific results from. We also have a program called Upskill Summit in Stark County. We had some short-term certificate funding from Ohio Department of Higher Ed that was frankly difficult to use. And with COVID, late in the spring, early in the summer, we saw an opportunity and asked the chancellor to give us a little flexibility in using those funds so that we could really begin to upskill individuals who are minority, unemployed, underemployed in these in-demand pathways like commercial driver's license, STNA, automotive service, welding, and many more, medical assisting. And we've seen immediately when we announced the program, thanks to our partners, Connexus NEO, the chambers, and many others, of course, OMJ, immediately we had 500 local residents apply for those upskill funds. We have taken 143 people so far through a credential to get into those in-demand fields such as CDL and STNA. And we believe that that short-term certificate funding has to be free or very low cost, which is what we were doing with Upskill. Free or very low cost to really work for the individuals who most need the training. What I'm really proud about that, with that program, what I'm really proud about is that as both of those programs, as we track the outcomes, many of the individuals we're serving are minority, and because of our partnerships with Oriana House and Summit County Community Action Agency, they're both minority and in some cases individuals re-entering society from serving in prison and really trying to improve their lives and have a plan to move ahead. So this is very important. And we're continuing what we've always done in terms of incumbent worker training with our employer partners. So that's just a look at some of the things we're doing locally. At the state level, Lisa mentioned I serve on the Governor's Executive Workforce Board. In that role, I represent this region and I represent 23 of Ohio's community and technical colleges, making sure that we can have opportunities and policies to support workforce. So I'm really proud to say that Ohio's Tech Cred program has thus far provided $12 million to almost 1,000 Ohio companies, and that's just to date. That program continues. Nearly 12,000 credentials have been earned by incumbent workers at those companies. So if you're interested in that program, call us at Stark State, or you can go to the techcred.gov.ohio.gov website. Again, just Google Tech Cred. Another program that's focused on low-income, unemployed, or underemployed Ohioans is IMAP, the Individual Micro-Credential Assistance Program. That's available at the University of Akron. You can get details on that program at the IMAP website. So as we talk about all these alternative, innovative ways to educate and train our citizens, we can't forget the importance of our educational partnerships and seamless pathways, which are so important to students of all ages. So, you know, we've got them and they work very, very well in Summit County. I know everyone's familiar with College Credit Plus, the dual enrollment program where students earn simultaneous high school and college credit. That's working very well. We have great partnerships with Akron Public Schools. We're a very active partner, and all of the other colleges and universities are very active partners in the career academies at APS. And we work very, very closely because we've got lots of four-year partners in the region. We work very closely on articulating from the associate degree to the bachelor's degree to make sure residents have affordable and seamless pathways. A great example of that is the Stark State University of Akron Direct Connect program. Direct Connect makes it possible for students who are still enrolled at Stark State to take advantage of advising and connections at the University of Akron that really help to assure a smooth transition. And we do all of that to help reduce the cost of a bachelor's degree. One of our most innovative pathways is with NeoMed, the Northeast Ohio Medical University. And at this point, I want to pause and take a moment to remember Jay Gershon. Many of us know Jay as one of the best partners and one of the best collaborators and a brilliant gentleman. Probably 7 years ago now, Jay and I signed this articulation, making it possible for Stark State College Associate of Science graduates to directly enter the pharmacy doctoral program at NeoMed. So think about that for a moment as we talk about opportunities for students. These are students who have an associate degree, and they are going directly to the pharmacy doctorate program. So again, I will say that many of us were stunned to learn of Jay's passing, and we'll miss him. We'll miss him a lot. But one of the many legacies he left here is the example of our NeoMed partnership and this smooth pathway, which NeoMed's current president, Dr. John Langell, reports is going very nicely. In fact, he just updated me and shared that 21 Stark State Associate of Science graduates have graduated with their PharmD from NeoMed, and 43 of our graduates are currently enrolled in the PharmD program, with 5 on track to graduate in May of 21. So this is all great, right? I mean, I'm here to say we're proud, and this is great, but it's not enough. It's not going to be enough to address workforce needs here in the region and across the country. The Brookings Institute and Jobs for the Future predict that the economic recovery from COVID will be very slow, and it will not be easy. We've heard of the V-shaped recovery. We've heard of the K-shaped recovery. It's not going to be a V, and the K means those who already have education and training, who are pretty well off and white, are on the upward K. Those who do not have skills, education, and training, and who are minorities and low income, are on the downward side of the K. Precisely what our Elevate Greater Akron plan told us before COVID and focused us on. So, what are the recommendations from these national think tanks? Well, one is that community college-based training and public-private partnerships have to happen to provide pathways to jobs and apprenticeships. We can't rely on the typical structure of the education to economic pathway. That's not going to work. Well, we're already doing some of that, but we need to do more. The other thing the experts tell us is that we have to have greater investments in childcare, in transportation, in social services and supports, so that individuals can pursue education and training while still taking care of their families and other responsibilities, especially those adult workers. And we're talking about that right now in the community. How do we wrap around community services so that instead of operating in their current structures, they operate fluidly for students, especially low-income and minority students, already enrolled in higher education on a pathway to an in-demand career? How do we make sure that all of our social services wrap around, support, and help that individual to succeed? The other recommendation, of course, is more funding for education and training, but not just education and training as it might be in a traditional sense, but more flexibility, more employer partnerships. And again, we're doing some of that, but we need to scale it up. So without a doubt, our number one job right now, without a doubt, our number one job is to keep people safe and healthy during the pandemic. But simultaneously, we really need to seize opportunities to connect unemployed and underemployed, especially minority citizens, with education and training and career opportunities that exist right now. We have a moment in time. And doing that now will be very important as we emerge from the pandemic. In my own view, Akron and Summit County are very well positioned to address these challenges. And that's, again, thanks to the Elevate Greater Akron plan, because it truly identifies the opportunities, but also the challenges. It sets out goals, but it also aligns resources, organizations, and has started to form partnerships that we need to advance our regional economy. So I encourage you to think about how all of us can work together to get through this pandemic, and also to think about our roles, our respective roles in addressing the challenges of our economy and bringing people into that economy. And together, I know we will achieve it. So thank you very much. It's been a pleasure to share some of my perspectives on education and training during the pandemic.
Thank you so much, Dr. Jones. It's very clear that Stark State is meeting the new 3 R's, resiliency, resourcefulness, and responsiveness, as a lead educator in our community. So a reminder, you can submit your questions through Asker, and we do have a few that have come through. So, Dr. Jones, as the coronavirus pandemic numbers are surging in this wave 3 of the pandemic, are there any particular challenges or concerns of the impact a slowdown could have on the education?
Yes, yes, and yes. I have had the pleasure this week, because we're approaching the end of our semester. I've been with students all week, of course, on Zoom, and our students are very concerned about what's going to happen now, as we are today, with all of the challenges of the pandemic, with about 3 weeks left in the term, including exam week. So we have been meeting regularly through COVID, but we're even meeting more often than that, and we have already made adjustments in our academic calendar to allow faculty to do some more flexible things without sacrificing rigor, because our employers need our graduates to have the requisite skills. But we are looking at how can we use the remaining 3 weeks, maintain safety. We've been doing pretty well, but we understand our numbers will go up as the community numbers go up. So we've redoubled our efforts to be more flexible. We've added some additional PPE. So we now have 3 layers of protection in some instances. And so we're doing everything we can to address this. I do want to mention that, in these skills-based classes, in many cases, hospitals and healthcare need our graduates. So we are trying not to delay the completion of those credentials because we need them now.
Thank you. Another question. What is the role that simulation can play in assisting students for these skill-based programs? Is this being used, and is this an effective model?
We are using simulation in many of our healthcare programs. Our limitation is that the accrediting bodies will only allow so much simulation to replace the clinical experience in programs like nursing, medical assisting, respiratory therapy. So we are using simulation more than ever, but we still have that limitation because of accrediting bodies, and our students need to have to be able to pass exams and meet all the credentialing requirements.
Thank you. Another good question. How will the pandemic impact current high school seniors? Do you see many waiting to be rising college freshmen? Do you recommend a gap year?
I really love that question. I did not build it into my speech, but I can tell you, you can Google. Please do, in fact, if you're a parent of a high school senior, Google gap year, with the exception of a handful of students going to the Ivy League colleges. Gap years are a very bad idea. They set students back in terms of their lifetime earnings. And, obviously, every delay in earning a degree sets people back in terms of their earnings, but also students who have that gap year do have a higher rate of stopping out for a long time or never going back to college at all. So it's not something we think is a good idea. I think parents need to look at other options. Keep your, keep your students in the community. We do have online available at all of the institutions. And while I know there are many students who don't like it, there are so many supports available at Stark State and other educational institutions. Students have to just ask.
Another question about online. Do you anticipate online education continuing as the norm in 2021? And if so, what can we do to support students who are struggling with this online education?
I have always believed online education is coming and will be a major force in educating all of us through our lives. I'm certainly not an expert on this, but I read a lot about it, and all of the educational experts, I'm sure you've read yourselves, the predictions that the COVID pandemic has just sped that up. So yes, I expect online to continue. We did a recent survey of our current students to ask them how many want online in the spring, and 2/3 of our students said they do, and 2/3 of our students have said they will continue to want more online in the future.
You've shared some of the financial supports available to students during the pandemic. What are some of the other resources the college has to support the students through the emotional and psychological toll that the pandemic is having on all of us?
That's a really good question. So we have academic counselors and advisors, but we also have personal counselors and advisors. And the best thing we can do, because that our supports are mostly in the academic areas. Tutors and people to help in the class and out of the class with all sorts of academic needs. But so our personal counselors' main job is to connect our students to community resources where we believe they can really get the help they need. Something I left out of my speech, but it's important. We did a survey of our students. 30% of our students reported, and we have working adult students, so this is a big deal. 30% of our students reported that they lost their jobs due to COVID. And 2/3 of our students who responded to our survey reported that they have lost income because of COVID. So these supports, these personal supports, housing, transportation, food, child care, health care, they are more important now than ever, as are the academic supports.
Remote digital learning requires connectivity. How has the college addressed lack of connectivity for some of its students?
We have worked closely with Spectrum. We have also worked with other cable providers. Our COVID funds allow for students to have finances to help with connectivity. Some of our issues are that not all of the students we serve are in areas where connectivity is available. So we have our classrooms and labs are open. Again, not wide open, open with all the limitations I described. So students can still come to campus right now and access all of our resources. But we've also encouraged students, especially during some of the more shutdown times, to use internet available in the parking lots of libraries like the Summit County District Library, where we are right now. Our libraries have tremendous resources to help because of the internet connections, even just parking in the parking lot. So we are trying to help students. The key is to make sure students know we can help them with that and to have them tell us what they need. So that was one of our first steps that will continue to be needed as we continue through the pandemic.
Sure. What can others in the community do to support students and ensure a future pipeline of well-educated, prepared employees for our community?
Well, that's really my favorite question. If you're an employer, think about creating one of those work-based learning opportunities for students. If you're having trouble filling skills-based jobs, good jobs. And again, you have different sectors of education to help with everything. We have a wonderful K-12 system. So if you have jobs that don't require any post-secondary, I am sure that our schools are ready to help. If you need employees with some skills, you have Stark State, you have University of Akron, but look at those partnerships. In terms of the greater community, I mentioned that we're working with community agencies. I deeply believe, I am convinced that the best way for us to move the needle in a meaningful way in terms of education and training and career advancement of our neediest citizens is by starting on our college campus with the students we're already serving. Partner with us to make sure they succeed. They go to work for our local companies. They go back to their neighborhoods, to their families, to their friends as a model of success. And more students will come and we'll be able to fill these in-demand pathways. I mean, it's one way. I'm not saying it's the solution to everything, but I do believe it's a very viable opportunity that we can partner and achieve.
And our last question this afternoon that's come in, what do you see the future of learning looking like 5 years from now, post-COVID? What's your crystal ball?
Yeah, wow. I mean, I read so much about it. I'm not sure this is my crystal ball, but I will offer that I do think we're going to have more online. I think we're going to have more simulation. We're part of the Ohio Association of Community Colleges, and I'm happy to say we just learned that we're part of a Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation initiative to help faculty develop new and better teaching and learning in a remote environment. And so I think that's going to be critical. The question about simulation in our skills-based classes, I really believe it's time for us to start exploring with our accrediting bodies, what are some of these simulation opportunities? Education, just like everything else in our business and social and personal lives will change as a result of the pandemic. I think the challenge is for us to help shape that in a way that the changes help us continue to achieve the important goals of making sure all are included in education and training.
Para, thank you so much for being with us today. And on behalf of the Akron Roundtable, it's my pleasure to present to you this contemplative sun as a memento of your time with us today. This celebratory work of art was designed exclusively for the Akron Roundtable by local artist Don Drum. Thank you all for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you at the December 10th event for our next virtual forum. Have an enjoyable and safe day.